Hello viewers, Super GT here. Welcome to the video. So this is just going to be a quick guide on how to get a bit quicker on Forza Motorsport 6. Well, I say that, but actually it'll probably help you with all the Forza Motorsport. So Forza 6 is coming to an end. I mean, Forza 7 is just around the corner. I'd imagine a lot of the things in this guide will probably actually carry over to Forza 7. And obviously it's not too late to try and improve your skills. So we all probably fall somewhere on the scale of, I mean, on one end you're just starting the game, you don't really have an idea of racing lines, you're probably finishing last all the time, you're really slow. And then on the other side you've got your seasoned pro winning every race you do, and you can set world records. So on that scale most of us fall somewhere in between, and obviously depending on where you are on that scale then you have to judge my tips accordingly. The main thing to start with right at the beginning is, for those of you who are like really just new to the game, and that is just the basic racing line. So in the pre-race menu, just go to assists, suggested line, you can turn full or braking only. This is really just a very simple guideline on what the racing line is, and you can see the line on the track there. I'm going to keep this brief because it's fairly simple. The general rule is on a right hand corner, which we're coming up to at Road America, first turn, you approach from the left. As you can see, I'm on the left hand side, and then you go across to the centre, the apex, and then back out to the other side. That's the very simple way to take a corner. And again, second corner is a right-hander. Approach from the left, turn into the apex, and use the power of the car to go back out to the other side of the track. Road America is quite an easy track to practice this on because it's just got very simple corners, standalone corners. It's not too complex, this circuit. So if you want to practice your racing line, that's the basic tips, and obviously just maximise the track as much as you can. So we're approaching from the far right hand side here, going into as far into the apex as you can, and then obviously to the outside. So that's a very basic tip on the racing line. So the main thing you're going to have to learn in getting faster on Forza are the assists. Now, to begin with, you've probably got ABS on, steering probably on normal, but to be honest I use normal. Assisted, just don't bother, don't do that at all. I mean, you want to move off of assist as quick as possible really, because you're not really driving the car. Probably on automatic, and probably with traction control and STM on. To be honest, I think STM you can kind of turn that off quite quickly. It doesn't really do too much, so I'd always recommend turning that one off quite quickly. Now, the assists obviously are very important, and the order in which you learn them is up to you. The order that I learnt them in is ABS first, so I learnt that off, then I learnt traction control off, then I learnt manual gears, and then with the clutch as well. So I do have a guide which I'll put in the description for traction control and for ABS, so I won't go into those too much detail. You can just go on the guides, and that will help you instead. So one thing I do want to touch on though is the suggested line. So you've got braking only there, and that is something it might seem like only a beginner would use it, but actually it's actually very useful for anyone. So even the top drivers on Forza Motorsport do use the braking line only, and it is very useful just as a rough estimate of where to brake on each corner. So for example, if I load up a random track and then I'm just going to drive a random car, which I've never driven around this track before. So I'm driving here at Sebring, and I don't know where I'm braking at all. So as you can see, the yellow line turns into red when I need to brake, and that is so crucial because when you're driving so many different cars around so many different tracks, it's almost impossible to guess exactly where to brake every time. And you can see there, pretty much perfect. I mean, if anything, it's too good. This system, it's just so good. It's so good at telling you exactly where to brake that if anything, it makes it too easy. But it is very useful, and I'd definitely recommend turning that on if you want extra consistency in your braking phase. Just going to whack on the headphones. Now you can see this car is fairly slidey on the exit of turns, like it does like to slide. Now this is where I'm just going to quickly go through the traction control guide. So basically, if you just want to press up on the D-pad, you can see on the right hand side I've got throttle, like the percentage. And what you want to be doing really is about 50%, 50-70% on the exit of turns. If you just mash it down to 100% on the exit of a turn, while your car's still turning, it's very likely to slide. So I can kind of demonstrate that here. So if I go round, if I change gear, you can see the car begins to slide. So the key thing with traction control is, or having it off, is that the car will slide if you've got too much throttle and too much angle, like too much steering. So once the car's straightened out, then you can start to accelerate at 100%. But while the car's still turning, you don't really want to be 100%. It depends on the car as well, because some cars are obviously much more powerful than others. Traction control is really not needed in the lower classes, like D class, E class. The cars just aren't powerful enough and it won't matter, so you might as well just turn it off. But in the higher classes, like this car is an R-class car, so much more power, so there's much more potent force coming out of the turns. You can see there, just mash down 100% throttle whilst turning, and the whole thing spins around. Click on the link in the description, which will go through a more in-depth guide on how to deal with traction control off. And I guess while we're here, we might as well do the ABS quickly. So ABS, you really want to be doing about 70% on the brake pedal. That's about the magic rate. So it's essentially works like this. If you press down above about 80%, the brakes will lock. So if I do 100%, you see the brakes lock, your braking zone will extend, the car won't brake as fast. So basically the wheels need to be rotating to brake quickly, and if you lock up, they're not rotating, they're sliding straight. So you need to learn basically to hold the brake trigger about 70%. And again, just press up on the D-pad, you can see exactly how much brake percentage I've got, 30%, and just go around the track, just practice and practice and practice, and eventually you will get there without having to look. I mean, it's just becomes second nature to hold exactly at 70% or near enough. It's hard to be perfect, but as long as you're around about there. So I mean, a technique I use, when I'm holding the button, as I press it, the end of my thumb rests on the edge of sort of the white part here. So when it reaches about 70%, so it depends on exactly how you place your finger on the button. But you'll find as you practice, you'll probably end up putting your finger in the same place, and then you build up consistency. Consistency is the key, really, in Forza. Just being able to do the same thing over and over and over again. Because if you can brake at the perfect spot, then there's no point in doing it differently. You might as well keep braking at the same spot with the exact same percentage of brakes. So just keep practicing, go around the same track, keep doing it, and eventually get up to 70%. A more in-depth guide is in the description below, which I did a while back. Next up is manual gears. So if you're shifting on automatic, the game's obviously shifting for you. A lot of the time you go for a corner, it will shift when you don't really need it to. And in manual, you can hold it in a certain gear, which will give you better drive for a corner. So manual is definitely worth learning. And it might seem daunting at first, because it was for me, but it's something that anyone can learn. And I must say, a lot of these assists, anyone can learn. You just have to put the time in, basically. The time and effort. It's not easy, to become good. It does require quite a lot of effort and practice and dedication. And a lot of the time you will seem slower and worse to begin with. Well, you will be, because you're not used to having the assist off. But you just have to keep at it, and eventually you will get there. So this is the layout I use, layout 1. Now for the clutch, which is very important as well, that can add some time or take off some time. Switch handbrake and clutch is on. So as you can see there, the clutch is A, shift up is B, and shift down is X. So all you're doing is really doing a motion. When you're shifting up, you're pressing A and B. This is with clutch on, by the way. Pressing A and B, and then when you're going down, you're pressing A and X. So you're pressing 2 buttons at once. And there's actually a really easy way to shift up and down. But again, I have a guide for that, manual with clutch, in the description. That's the third guide in the description. So if you want to be looking at that in more detail, then obviously click on that link. So far we've just covered the basics of racing line. I mean, that should be the first thing you have to get down before you really learn anything else. If you haven't done that, then obviously just learn the racing line. Just turn the racing line on, the assist, and then you should be able to get a rough estimate of where you have to go. Then the assists, learn them. You're just gonna have to learn them off. Learn to race with them off. You don't have to do them all at once. I didn't. I mean, I actually learned from Forza 2. I had all of them on, and then from then to about Forza 5, from that long, I learned all of the assists off. So it's taken me, 3-4 games to learn to go with all the assists off. That's obviously quite a long time, but you can do it a lot quicker than that, definitely. I know for sure that there's some people out there who could do that a lot faster. You obviously just have to put the time in. But then how do you go to another level? Let's say you've got the assists, you got them down, or you still got some of them on, but you're still fairly fast. There's two ways really of kicking up to another level where you can start setting like top 1% times in the world. And I'd say one is Rivals and two is League Racing. So Rivals first, we'll go to that. So just go to here on the menu. On Rivals is really where you see how the quickest people do what they're doing. So what I'm going to do here is go to a spec challenge. So everyone's in the same car. And we'll just pick this one here. I haven't actually done it yet. So Brands Hatch in an Aston Martin. Press Y to go to the leaderboard. And then if you look on the right hand side, you can see the file. And that's got a little semicircle in there. That means I can watch the replay. So this is Lage, this one. And you can see there on the ABS, TCS and auto columns, there's nothing there. So they had no assists on. That kind of shows you what is the quickest way to drive that car. If the quickest people are using no assist, then no assist is the quickest way. Sometimes they'll use TCS, sometimes just manual with no clutch. Typically in the GT cars and prototype cars, you just want manual. You don't want manual with clutch. But then for the slower cars, so D class up to let's say about A or S class, then that's where you do want manual with clutch. But anyway, have a look at the replay. So what I like to do, just go on a replay, press A, watch the replay. Now what you can do here is you can if you just pause it, then you can use the left trigger and right trigger to go forwards and backwards. Go to T, turns the telemetry on. So right now I can watch exactly what Lage did, where he braked, where he accelerated, where he turned, which gear he was using, and all of these things are crucial to being quick in the game. So going to the first corner, Brands Hatch, it's a very tricky corner. Let's see where he brakes. So 100% throttle, and then he's off the throttle there, and then he's on the brakes. And you can see what I'd say there is perhaps where the barrier ends on the right hand side there. So there's that barrier there. So what I'm doing as I'm watching this is I'm looking for points where they brake. So something on the side of the track which is level with where he's braked, which I'd say is the end of that barrier on the right hand side. So you can see there, and he's just started to brake there. So that's where he started braking. Maybe he got it absolutely spot on, and if I tried to brake there I might actually go on a little bit. So maybe braking a tiny bit before that might help. So going in, he brakes there, and you can see there he was on 70% throttle, 70% brakes, or just around about 70%, which is pretty much perfect. Going around the first corner, doesn't touch the curb, so it's probably best not to touch that curb. That one I know for a fact it does throw you up, so don't touch that curb. Lage doesn't do it, so it's probably best not to. This curb you can touch, but I know for a fact as well that you do want to be careful with the right hand edge, which is on now. So these are things you'll just learn as you play the game. This is why just playing the game a lot helps. Just knowing exactly what curbs do help you, which ones don't, and which part of the curb does help you. So coming through here, getting that position there helps. But if you get that position there, that part of the curb is very shaky. So just pay attention to that when you're driving, which part of the curb helps me and which part doesn't. So coming up the hill, next braking point. So he's started braking just before the orange barrier on the left hand side, so well before the bridge. And maybe there's a little gap in the shadow which you can just see above the car, and then by the time he gets to it there, he started to brake. So you can see from this, you can see exactly where to brake and which gear. Let's have a look which gear he uses. So he's in fourth, then he brakes, and he's going into the turn down to second gear. And another technique he used there is trail braking, which is really important in this game. So what trail braking is when you're braking and you're going into the apex. So you're not going in a straight line and then turning. you're going straight into the apex, and you can carry more speed in and brake slightly a bit later. So if you're not brave enough, just brake in a straight line, then turn. But this is a technique you'll want to learn eventually. Trail braking, where you just go flying into the turn like that, where you go straight in towards the apex. Can't be used on every corner, but this corner is a good example. So then up to third gear. Does it shift to fourth gear? No. So the gears actually went quite high there. You could have shifted up to fourth, but sometimes it's not worth it if you're going to shift down straight away. So that's another thing. Don't shift up if you don't have to. You're coming up to another corner and a braking zone, so you're going to go back down a gear. So sometimes it's not worth shifting up if you're going to shift straight back down again. So maximising the track width, as I said earlier, whilst turning in. And sometimes people do like to use the grass. Grass can be very useful in this game, so just dipping two wheels on the grass can kind of hook you round, and it doesn't really slow you down at all, which is something important in this game. And track limits as well. Knowing where you can put your car without getting a dirty lap. This is why this corner is such a good example. So as you come around on the exit, you can go very wide on this corner and it's still clean. So the game has a penalty system. If you go way out on the grass, you get a little exclamation mark, which means your lap is dirty and it won't count as well as someone who's done a clean lap. So that is clean, and you can see he's actually beyond the white line, but he's on the curb. That's the crucial thing here. So you just know exactly where you can put your car and where you can't put your car. That's just another thing you want to learn. So obviously there's a lot to pick up, but I think when I'm looking at these replays, the main thing I'm looking at is the gear and where to brake. Those are the two main things. The track limits, I kind of know them already, so that's just something you'll have to experiment with, and it's just something you just learn. I could go on forever about teaching you which corner you're allowed to go wide on or which one you're not. I think the best way is just to play the game, and eventually you'll just learn it for yourself. So coming around here, you can see that one can go very wide on, beyond the white line, but just stay two wheels on the curb minimum. And this is another trail braking corner. So I'm just looking at that one on the right hand side, and he brakes just before it there. And again, he's just going to carry the speed in down to third gear, so not quite down to second. And where to accelerate is also very important. So he's actually accelerated just before that white line. You can let the car roll in. Let's go through the whole corner. So he's coming up after the two, after the one, started to brake. Whilst turning in, it's a long corner, this one. Very late apex because you're coming onto a long straight. And then he started to accelerate there. You can see the white line going across, so he started accelerating before that. And again, not touching the curb. And then throttling out to the outside. And again, just using that curb on the outside. So he's taken that pretty much perfectly. And obviously it's going to be very hard to match that, but once you start getting your braking point down, I tend to find that the rest of the corner will follow. And you can see here, he's coming onto a very long straight, which is why he took a late apex. So taking a late apex is very useful when that corner is followed by a long straight. So coming down the hill, braking just before, pretty much at the bottom of exactly at the bottom of that dip, about there. So you've got the 3 board, you've got the 2 board, and he brakes halfway. So there. Down to 4th gear, carry it in. And I know from experience, that curb on the inside, you don't really want to touch it. It does unsettle the car quite a lot. The one on the outside, you can touch. That one's fine. And this one, there's a 2 board. Then there's the end of the barrier on the left hand side, the yellow mark on the barrier, as you can see on the left. And he brakes just after that. There's a gap in the shadow, actually. Now, the shadows don't move. There's no dynamic time of day on this game, so that gap in the shadow is always going to be there. So you can just use that, brake there, and brake there. And remember, 70% pressure if you're using ABS off. Down to 3rd gear, carry the speed through. But you can see here the general gist is that you're just looking what they do, where they brake, where they turn in, and just trying to follow that as best as you can. So obviously I can just follow the Ghost and then try to match him. I probably won't because he's one of the best players in the world. Which is why this is going to come to my next tip, where you just follow someone who's a bit quicker than you. So he's going to cross the line here and finish the lap. So these guys are setting low 135s. So I mean, if I were to just pick a lap, let's say 2 seconds off, which I know I could probably get roughly. Let's go for the 100th in the world, okay? So what I'm going to do is set as rival. This is a really good way to practice. Set someone as a rival who you think you could achieve, someone's time you think you could beat. So if you don't have a time, just set a time, and then see who's a bit above you, and then just follow that guy, and then load the rival, and then go into the game. So before we start, just have a look at the assists. So I'm not going to use the braking line I typically drive with it off, but I mean, as I said earlier, you can use that. ABS off. Steering, I use normal. Sim can be a bit quicker. It's very twitchy though. So normal, I mean, you're not going to lose too much time using normal. Manual with clutch, because it's not a GT car. And traction control off, which is what all the fastest guys were using. So first lap, obviously the Ghost is just going to fly away. And on the first lap, you just want to get a feel for the car, really. Just try to remember exactly what I learned from Lage's lap just a moment ago. So I'm going to come up here to do my lap, and I'll be on the same pace roughly as the Ghost. So you can see exactly where you're losing time, basically. So braking at the end of that barrier, down to third gear. I've gone very wide there. So you can see the car very shaky on the edge of that curb. Down 2 gears while trail braking in, and I've let the car slide a little bit. So if your car's sliding, you can hear it and you can see the skid mark. So just try to turn out and make sure the car is settled a little bit wide. You see, I lost quite a lot of momentum there by going a little bit wide through the apex compared to the Ghost. So that's somewhere I can improve. So the good thing about this is that I can see exactly where I'm losing time, because the Ghost will start pulling away, and I know exactly where to improve then. So you can see here at the end of my second flying lap, a lot closer to the Ghost. Should hopefully be able to beat it on the next lap. And then as you can see here, on the third time of asking, I'm just about going to beat the Ghost. It's across the line, and there we go. So not much time taken really. And then what I can do now, I can go back on the leaderboard and have a look for someone else who's a little bit quicker than that, and then follow them as well. So if we have a look at the leaderboards there, so now I'm 100th in the world, or sorry, 100th in Europe, and then near me, it's 136th in the world. Obviously I could go quite a lot quicker than that, I think, but what I could do now, have a look up 137.1 I did, maybe half a second quicker, so like a 36.5, and then follow that Ghost around. So someone, let's have a look, 36.5, like one of these guys here. So just follow one of these guys, and then that Ghost will be a little bit quicker. And I find in motorsport in general and racing in a game that if there's someone a little bit quicker and you can follow them, they kind of pull you along with them. So sometimes that's one of the best ways to get a little bit quicker, just by following someone who's just a little bit quicker than you are. So that covers rivals and how to follow a Ghost. That really is, I think, the best way. And just doing that over and over in different cars, just try lots of different tracks, different cars, and you'll get a lot better. But that won't necessarily make you good at racing. You'll be good at lapping. But if you want to be good at racing as well, then I would recommend league racing. And I don't necessarily mean the league racing feature in the game. So I don't mean this menu here. What I mean is organised leagues, ORL, Tora, Delta. There's loads of leagues actually popping up everywhere now, and it's a good place to start if you really want to get involved racing against other people. You probably have to find people who are evenly matched with you. The good thing about ORL is that everyone signs up. You've got some really quick guys, some slower guys. You qualify, and then you get put into a lobby with people who are the same speed as you. So that's really good a way to practice with people who are similar ability. Some of them will be slightly quicker than you, so obviously that's where you're practicing, really by trying to tag along with them, and that's how you get quicker, by following them basically. Another thing you might want to know is tuning. So tuning is very important. Admittedly, I'm not the best at tuning, and I do just tend to use other people's tunes, and I guess knowing the right car and the right tune to use will give you better results, because you'll have a quicker car, quicker tune, and you'll beat more people. What that doesn't do necessarily is give you better skill at the game. So if you use a really OP car, that doesn't necessarily make you better at the game, but you will have better results. So there is two sides to that coin, but tuning is definitely something to try out. And again, it's just experimentation and time. So just move the slider down one way, move it back the other way, see what happens. I mean, all the description is there on the right hand side. There are some guides on YouTube. Admittedly, I don't have a guide on YouTube on how to tune because, as I say, I'm not the best in the world. You want someone like Jess Ali Gamble, or someone who really knows what they're doing to have a guide, really. But I'm not that person. But tuning is important, and it can definitely help. So there we go. A pretty long guide. Main thing, racing line to begin with, then the assists, then learning rivals and league racing to get to the very top. And perhaps another thing to add at the end, you see that I'm part of F4H, and you know what, I think joining a team really does kick you up another gear. It might sound strange, but being involved in a community, a group of racers who are pushing each other and teaching each other and giving each other tips, it is useful. And what it can do, it can spur you on to set better times and get better results because you want to beat your teammates and do better than you did before. So obviously it's not easy just to join a team. Not all teams can just simply be joined. If you start practicing, get your name out there in the community, then perhaps a team will snap you up. But there we go. A fairly long guide this has actually turned out to be, I think. But I hope you found it useful. Of course, if you want any more answers, then just ask the question in the comments and I'll try to answer the best I can. Forza 7 comes out very soon. I'll imagine a lot of this translates to that game as well. So obviously take these tips in mind and probably carry them over to the next game as well. There we go, guys. Thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button if you found it useful. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.